Welcome everybody to our ad hoc online discussion tonight, focusing on the latest developments in Geneva and on the role of women in the peace process. Today our talk will be in English. Our guests today are Layik Topçan and Andromachi Sofokleos. A warm welcome to you both. Layik Topçan is a town planner with over 40 years experience. She graduated from Middle East Technical University in Ankara. After serving 36 years in the town planning department of Northern Cyprus, she retired as deputy director. Currently, she is consultant on planning and environment issues. She's a member of the High Commission of Historical and Cultural Heritage. Between 2015 and 2020, she was involved in the Cyprus peace negotiations, focusing on property issues. She's a trained mediator and facilitator and has been active in civil society, advocating for women, the environment, and peace. Andromachi Sofokleos is a political theory graduate from University of London and a political analyst. Besides being one of the founders of Unite Cyprus Now movement, she has been active in Cypriot civil society for many years, working on projects seeking to generate discussion and critical thinking about the country's complex political problems. As an analyst, she is providing political insights and research for international and local clients. Her current fields of expertise are the Cyprus problem, the rise of the far right, and natural gas developments in the Eastern Mediterranean. She's also co-producing Nicosia Uncut podcast at Island Talks. Well, here we are. Welcome to both. Very warm welcome. And so the talks in Geneva have ended. The Secretary General described the talks as very difficult, but he is still prepared to try again. I'd like to hear your thoughts about what happened in Geneva and how do you see things developing? Can we still dare to hope? Layik, can we start with you?
Okay, to be honest, I wasn't really having any hope that we were going to see any positive result from this Geneva, because the position of the two sides was very, very strong and hard. It would have been a surprise, a good surprise, if we have seen any positive result. But of course, I feel so sorry, because it's been more than half a century that we are working towards finding a solution in this country to enjoy everything together. But that's another disappointment. You see, not actually a very disappointment, but I was still hoping that we might have some good result. But still, I feel disappointed.
Andromachi?
Well, I think that all of us that have been in some way involved in this process, we feel sad, we feel disappointed, we feel angry, we feel in despair, we are lacking hope. And as Lagik said, I don't think that any one of us was optimistic about the conference. We all knew that there was no common ground between the sides. I think we all agree that for all of us, the greatest opportunity was back in Crans-Montana, and even after Crans-Montana was still while Mr. Mustafa Akinci was in power in the Turkish Cypriot community. When Mr. Akinci failed to be elected in the way that he failed, I think that we all knew that difficult days were coming for the Cyprus problem. And I honestly believe that we saw a situation in which we saw the same movie that we always see. And I believe that we should be really concerned about why are we not changing the ways that we proceed towards things if we keep on failing. And I think that this is something that we should consider if we are to look forward to something different.
Well, yes, I do agree with you. Shall I just continue?
Yes, please, Laik.
Well, of course, the same scenario, but I think we have lost two monumental opportunities. And there is, you said, the last one was at Crans-Montana. I still feel so sad about Crans-Montana, because I was in the Geneva, Mont Pelerin, and the Crans-Montana during that negotiation process. And then we were hoping, because everything was negotiated, everything, including the security topic. After so many years, security was also being at the table, and all the guarantor powers were there, and everything was discussed. Property was discussed, territorial adjustment was discussed, governance was discussed, and there were a lot of convergence. And then it was very, it was unbelievably surprise for me at the end of the Crans-Montana was very unbelievably surprised for me. I wasn't expecting, because we were so sure that one way or another, because everything was on the plate, all the integers were there played. The only thing that we need was to signing an agreement of the menu, for the menu of how Cyprus will be designed. And then having Mr. Akinci there, very progressive and very genuine in supporting the everything, and also pushing the process for every stage, including dragging all the parties towards all types of negotiations, having the guarantors at the table, also just giving some concessions on the territorial aspect. So I think I really don't know what was the main fear behind. Actually, I do know, but we need to hear from the administration at the time, namely Mr. Anastasiadis and the team. Why did he just collapse the table? Why? Because we were all prepared, and then while we were waiting for a good result, at the middle of the night, we heard that the already been prepared to return back Cyprus. We were prepared to stay until the middle of the next week, and hoping that the Secretary General will find make everybody to reach an agreement, and just hoping to have a strategic framework to be signed. And now going back to at that moment, if you remember, Mr. Akın, you said that this is our the last effort for any federal solution. He was actually right. The things that are happening now shows that he was right. And then now, I don't know, we are just kind of in a very adventurous period, I guess.
It's very dangerous situation, but the Secretary General has at least offered us one more meeting. So do we dare to keep hoping? Could this just be a testing of the waters with the new government in the north? And what do you think?
If this question is to me, and I say I always want to be hopeful, because we don't have any other choice. You see, the most feasible solution for our this Cyprus dispute, which is just lasting more than half a century, is federation. And it might be a loose one. It might be the central government could be the strong one or the loose one. It doesn't matter. We need one type of federation. I don't see any other possibility for solution. The two communities have just fight for many years. One for unification with Greece, and the other one was just partition. And I don't want this tiny island to be divided, to have the Taksim, you see, because our resources, all the resources, environmental resources, natural resources, human resources, our opportunities, we need to learn to share it and build very healthy society.
Thank you. And Ramahit, do you feel we have future prospects in the next round, or
no, to be honest, I'm not hopeful about this process. And in all honesty, even this meeting, I still fail to see why it was convened by the United Nations Secretary General. We knew that there was no common ground, and we knew that there was no way for the sides, at least at this stage, to sort of agree on something. I do not know what it was that Ms. Lud saw in order to, to advise the Secretary General to proceed to this meeting. At the same time, I must say that, as people on the island and people that we can understand the feeling on the ground, every single political process that fails leads to increasing nationalism, increasingly divisionist feelings on the island, the feelings of hatred and enmity flourish after a collapse in a political process. And it is like the United Nations is playing with the lives of Cypriots by convening a conference that really it was doomed to fail. Having said that, I know that the Secretary General referred to another one in 3 months. I honestly cannot see what will change in 3 months. Why will things be different in 3 months rather than now? And we need to think about what it is that we do and how we proceed. After the Crans-Montana failure, the failure of Crans-Montana, there were these sessions by the United Nations trying to figure out how to change the paradigm and how to not do the same mistakes like in the past. It has been repeatedly said that the youth, women, civil society need to be incorporated into the solution process. They need to be incorporated into the negotiation process. Why are all these statements not taken into consideration. Why are we still choosing to follow the same failed path with the same failed agents? These are questions that we really need to ask ourselves, and the United Nations need to consider before superficially calling it another conference in the same setting.
So what you're saying is you would like to see a move away from leadership-led negotiations.
Look, for the past, I mean, it's been since 1968 when the negotiations started amongst the sides. We see the same path. We see male, mostly old men. Currently, we have men who have built their careers on the Cyprus problem, professional politicians, people that have no touch with the people on the ground, politicians that cannot feel or understand what the people on the ground feel. And they are locked behind closed doors in absolute lack of transparency, negotiating the future of this island. And where are the people? This is not a question about only where are the women. It is a question about where are the people whose future is being negotiated in this process. And we know that the United Nations has, the UN Secretary General, in numerous reports, he has encouraged the greater participation of civil society, of women, but where are actions? And we do not feel represented. The people of the island are not represented in the negotiations. The vision of a united island has not trickled down to the public for them to know what the united federal Cyprus will look like. And how do we expect the right setting for a solution to be created, and how do we expect a sustainable solution to emerge from this process when the people that are engaged in it do not basically represent the people of the island?
In fact, the public has noticed the absence of women. I saw a comment on Facebook yesterday. Are there no women in Cyprus? Was what was one of the questions, because as you say, there were no women on the hardly any women at the negotiating table, or even in the background. And I mean, I'm comparing it to Afghanistan. In the Afghan talks, there were 10% negotiators who were women. I wonder if we are better than Afghanistan in this respect. And there's a growing body of research which shows how the involvement of women in peace processes leads to better implementation of any agreements, and they become more durable. So would you say that the negotiators have failed to use a fantastic strategy that could increase our chances for reunification? Do you think they did that on purpose, or do you think that it's just something within our societies that hasn't allowed this to happen? Layik, can we start?
You mean having women at the table?
There were hardly any women in the negotiating teams, let alone
And then
at the table.
You say the question is whether they have just choose that path intentionally in order not to have a solution. Is that the question?
It's a thought.
It's speculating. Well, of course, the presence of women at the table is very important, but even more important is to have gender lens, because there are two main issue I think we have to just understand. One, if we have to represent the population has to be, the community has to be represented in a democratic way at the negotiation process. And whether in the track 1 or track 2, usually the leaders are being those who are elected. And then we have the negotiation team, and that's an opportunity for the both leaders to they have a negotiation team composed in a way that have equal representation of both genders. And more important than, in each and every gender, whether woman or man, should be among those who have gender lenses. Personally, I went through many gender trainings and have a lot of background on the women activities. I do have some understanding, but while I was in the negotiation process, while we were talking about discussing the gender, the property and the territorial adjustment, I didn't even know how to bring in gender element to the negotiated property issue. So I think just thinking about 1325, UN Resolution 1325, I think the UN has a very crucial role. Yes, international community through UN resolution have adopted a resolution 20 years ago saying that women should have effective and meaningful role in the peacemaking process and peace prevention process. But seeing, of course, the negotiations in Cyprus and in most of the parts of the world are leaders driven. Not the UN is also a kind of interlocutor, even they're not even mediators. But I think they do have role just encouraging all those negotiating parties to have gender lenses and also more women at the table. And I still underline that it's more important to have gender lenses, more important than having women is having gender lens. Men should have gender lens, and the women should also have gender lens.
Because, do you think, sorry to interrupt, and Rumahi, do you think that they forgot to put on their gender lenses?
Yes, I do
I
think
don't
so.
think they have.
In fact, I'm not even sure they have those lenses, available around them to use. Yes, definitely. And we really need to think hard about this. And as Layik said, we are 21 years after the 1325 resolution, United Nations Security Council resolution, that underlined the importance of women in peace building, peacemaking processes. And we failed to take this into consideration. And study after study, survey after survey, they show that the concerns of men and women are different concerning the Cyprus problem itself. How can an all-male body feel and reflect on the concerns of women as well, especially an all-male body that, as we said, lacks the gender lens perspective. So women are absent, and it is a shame that in 2021 we still need to raise this. And it is not a matter of being politically correct or anything. It is a matter of building sustainable peace if we are interested in that.
And one more thing to add on. Usually, all these peace negotiations are based on a power sharing. Who will have the power? Who will use resources? Who will show? And I think this power struggle is another constraint. I think it prevents us to reach a kind of peaceful solution. So, what I think, environment. We have to bring in environment, climate change, natural resources, and just design any negotiation based on those three, because climate change is affecting everyone, regardless your ethnicity or regardless your gender. It affects everyone, and natural resources belongs to everyone, and there must be a way to just use this resources on fair basis without destroying environment. And then water, the biodiversity. These all belongs to humanity, without being Turkish, Greek, or German, English, or whatever the nation is. So everyone belongs this. So I think this environment and the natural resources has to be brought in the negotiation process, and the process should be redesigned, and we need a shift from the power struggle to cooperation and partnership over environment and the natural resources. This is what I think.
I agree totally, and I think this whole thing with power is a very masculine thing, perhaps, and maybe again women can be more effective, and it's that women are also more trusted, and they don't have the same vested interest in the system that the men have built up at this point in time. So I would like to ask you about women's activism, because we do have a history of some successful events that women have staged in Cyprus, such as the Women Walk Home. I know it was a very long time ago, but it was very effective and successful at the time. So perhaps you can also share your personal experience in activism as women. Andromachi, can we start with you?
Well, first of all, because you referred to the Women Return Home, I think it is one of the most significant cases of activism regarding the Cyprus problem, and one of the most important. And all of us, younger women, we look back to that in awe about what those women did back then. Well, yes, from my experience, the peace building movement is filled with women that are that want to offer, and I often hear these remarks about our culture being such that women want to stay at home, and all these things that we use as excuses for the absence of women from decision-making bodies. This is not the case. You have women active in the civil society in Cyprus, some of the most remarkable women. I mean, you find them in civil society in Cyprus. For instance, from my experience in the United Cyprus Now movement, as a male activist friend always says, we are a female-led movement mostly. And I believe that for me, and my belief is that it is this mixture of ideas, of perspectives that can create a comprehensive outlook towards any problem. And if we choose to ignore 50% of the population, it means that our solution that we have to offer to any problem will be lacking in vital aspects. And this is what we see today. And I am happy that in the Cypriot civil society, we have female activists that are very active and that they show the way. And it makes me increasingly concerned that this and decisiveness that we see in the civil society aspect is not reflected in the decision-making aspect. And this means that those who have the power to create the decision-making bodies, they choose to ignore women from the decision-making process. So, yes.
Layik, have you anything to add?
Well, women activism, I'm not so sure. Of course, being a woman, an active woman, is not enough to make the change, I guess. Sometimes even one person could bring change if they have a good, strong standing and a good team behind. And if it turns into a movement that can make a change. But I think it's time to think that this activism for more women and effective gender lens, we need men as well. And then because the system is still patriarchal and it's very much based on the power struggle, just sharing the elected and the administrative positions, being involved in the area which is considered as a male domain. All those areas are considered as soft, are just left to women. But if an area is considered very requiring a power struggle, there is general perception that that domain is not for women, because woman has to look after family, women has to look after kids, woman has to look after the elderly, and all the domestic things. And then because all these aspects, paid or unpaid works, are within the hands of women cannot find just time to participate in those processes and effectively. And for men, this is something very a good opportunity, because there are two sides of the coin. One side is women can the system is not really very favorable for women to just go into the that domain, and then men is using that as an excuse, saying that okay, women do not have time to do this. The power struggle is not for women, and they have to. Somebody should take this all the domestic uh, things, and then this is women are best in those areas. So let's give that part domain to women, and we can deal with this power struggle. This is how the picture is, and I don't think that in United Nations, even in United Nations, as an institution, and the community of the international states, I mean, all the states, that they are really aware of how crucial is having women at the table or in peacemaking processes will bring a change. And I have a memory. Of course, it is. It was back in 2001. We were in New York for a United Nations meeting, for CSW meeting. And then we've just knocked the door to just enter into the room where there will be, we thought that there will be just a panel there. And all the room was full of men with black suits. And then I said, well, we thought that it's according to the program, there must be one of the CSW meeting here. So is there any change? The answer that I got from the man, the gentleman, they said, oh, this is not about, the meeting is not about the women issues here now. The meeting is about a peace, said. I said, well, is it not peace in the agenda, women's agenda? So you see,
Yes.
of course, I don't know how far the things have changed since 2001, but I don't expect to see many changes. Of course, there are a lot of women in many posts. 1.5 years ago, we were in the United Nations again as for the launch of a Global Alliance for Women Mediators. There were very powerful women there.
I hope they offered you a seat, Naik.
Then all those powerful women can do a lot of contribution in the process for the peace process, any peace process, including Cyprus.
Absolutely. And Romaki, have you got any memories, a personal experience of being a woman activist that you had to battle? You must have some personal story to tell.
No, I think we all, and I think that any woman who hears me will be able to empathize. I think we all have had moments in which we are seen as, you know, a young woman that what do you have to offer, or seen in a sexist way, or you know, referred to as regarding our looks rather than the substance that we have to offer. I remember political leader in Grand Montana. He was shouting at me in the most disregarding way in the hotel lobby in which they stayed, Greek Cypriot political leader. And I must say this, I remember it was Mr. Vasiliou who entered the room, and he confronted this man, and I was trying to tell to Mr. Vasiliou that it is okay and that I could handle it. And it was only upon the intervention of Mr. Vasiliou that this man decided to stop speaking to me in the way that he did. So it was, and so I thank Mr. Vasiliou, but at the same time, you understand the way some people think. But for me, all these are things are part of the game. I profoundly believe that every person, we have the struggles of our times, and I believe that for a woman today, especially in Cyprus, this is part of the struggle of our time, to impose ourselves, to not allow any room for doubt that we are serious about what we are talking. And I think that this is a part of our struggle today. And we, as women, we need to embrace this struggle. We need to, first of all, reflect on it, understand it, face the challenge, not allow ourselves to assimilate in this perspective that they try to impose on us, and to fight. And our fight will be reflected on the future generations. And I profoundly believe, sometimes when you are a forward-thinking person and a person that is involved with what happens internationally, it can get very frustrating being in Cyprus, because we see in New Zealand the leader there, we see in Finland, we see the respect and how some things are granted in the international sphere, and then we look at Cyprus. But I believe we shouldn't despair. We should acknowledge that this is the process that we are going through, and this is the struggle of our time, and we should be willing to fight it.
So I've got a question here from someone. What are common misconceptions that people have about the role of women in politics? We've covered some of that. But the next bit is, how can we combat those misconceptions and communicate more effectively about gender equality in politics and other sectors for that matter? So how can we fight without saying it's not just part of the game? We have to actually start doing something about it. Maybe have laws in place where you can't call a woman names just because she's your rival in politics. How do we, because I think a lot of women maybe put off politics because they don't appreciate the atmosphere that can be there. And unless there are more women in politics, you will continue to have that atmosphere. It's a vicious circle. So, Layik, what do you have any ideas on that matter?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that this is about democracy. And if we just define democracy in a simple way, saying that it's the way of representation, I'm not talking about the direct democracy, just being inclusive, everything. I'm just talking it very conventional way, a very simplest way. Even if we think that this representative democracy, then the half of the population is not being represented at the political arena. So I wonder what is the percentage of women MPs in the in the parliament in the south, and in the north it is not even very close to 10%, but
in the south it's 19%. 19%.
Well, 10% is, I think, critical the number, because once you reach 10%, you become visible, and then, but we need to reach at least 30%. Many countries, this is called as a whether quota or affirmative action. But this is not only being, it's not, this percentage is not only for being represented in the parliament. This has to be from the grassroots, from all the party organs, everything, and on electoral list as well. And then if you just go and vote, you have to just vote for at least that percentage that to allow at least 30% of candidates could be elected as women. This is one part of it. Another part, and if we just approach the issue as from a very conventional way, thinking that woman should be in the domestic domain, yes, but when you approach this issue from the democracy perspective, then you can still say that the woman who's considered to be in the domestic domain should be heard, because they have their own needs and they're the one who can voice those needs, not the men for them. Women should be given the opportunity to just say their needs and fight for their needs, and also carry these needs towards the decision-making levels. But this is not the case. So when we just watch New Zealand or the Nordic countries, I really feel very envy, and I also have very admire those young politicians who are only in the middle of their 30s, and they're just ruling country in a perfect way. And it's not a coincidence that those countries are very quite successful in managing this COVID-19 pandemic. And also another thing, the Canadian Prime Minister is not a woman, but he has this gender sensitivity. That's why also that government is also quite successful in dealing with this COVID issue and some other issues as well. So I think the having women also and also gender understanding need to go together, and we need we really need pioneer politicians, pioneer people from the community to cooperate to carry this in the best level as possible. But I should admit that my generation, we have done a lot of things, maybe just help for having more awareness and fight for, maybe we have achieved some certain things, but we are not at there yet. There's more ways to just cover, and I just rely on the young generation, this Z generation, let's say, that maybe they can do something.
I'm sure things will be very different when they are our age. But Andromachi, have you anything to add about the combating of misconceptions and allowing more women to be in politics?
The only thing I would like to add is that we need to understand that we live in a very patriarchal society at every level. And patriarchal society does not only mean that there are only men in the decision-making bodies, but it also means that the structure of our society is such that we don't have the institutions, we don't have the system that will acknowledge what women are doing concerning the society and assist them. So the mere fact that a woman needs to choose between her career and her raising a child, because we don't have the proper structure, rare breeding structure in our community and in our societies in order to help women not to have to make this choice, is one issue. We need to, and this is where the gender lens that Laik insists on comes. We need to put this perspective when we design our societies, and we don't see this perspective in the way that our society is structured. And we shouldn't, it is not, as I said before, it is very easy to say, oh, women are simply not interested because they don't want to make the step. We need to come and ask ourselves, Why is this the case? Is it because how can we have so many women in the Cypriot civil society so active, and yet we don't see this reflected in the political structure? Where is that? What is the problem that creates this gap? And I believe that the problem is that it is different to be offering yourself to be working in the Cypriot civil society. The demands are different, and it is different to be a politician. The demand is different, what is expected of you is different, and we do not have the structure, the system that will allow for women to incorporate their child breeding role in their professional lives as well. And this is something that we need to acknowledge and work on. And it is not, doing favors to women. It is a matter of the structure and what our mentality as a society is.
And yet 44% of the workforce is female.
Yes, exactly.
And of course, this is the figure in the south, and in north. Interesting area. The majority, predominantly, the teachers are women. But when it comes to the headmaster positions or the leaders of the labor unions, we mostly see men. Although many of them are women, and also in the professional areas as well. I'm a member of the Union of Chamber of Engineers and Architects. Once I had the opportunity to serve as a chairperson for the Chamber of Town Planners, but I don't remember any woman chairperson for the union of the association, union of the chambers. There are a lot of women engineers, there are a lot of women architects, and a lot of women landscape architects, a lot of women environmental engineers, and in other fields. And I don't remember any woman chairperson in the last 40 years. So that's a glass ceiling issue. Is very important.
Important.
That glass ceiling issue is actually due to the system, the male dominant system,
the patriarchal system.
Yes, patriarchal system and the male dominant values. How the entire society sees women, the woman's role in the community. These are all valid, not only in Cyprus, in most of the countries.
Thank you. We have a question.
And you see, even in the Nordic countries, although the women are in a very, very powerful standing in the political arena, but they're not still in the private sector.
We have a question here from Argyro Nicolaou, a question for Andromachi. Is it incompetence, is it narcissism, or is it a politically deliberate exclusion of women, civil society, and other stakeholders that is making the political elite stick to the same pattern? We touched on this earlier, but let's go back to it.
Yes, so I believe it's convenient as well. Following the same path is very convenient rather than changing it. And it's also convenient because they enjoy the power that they have. But I also believe that it is a matter of incompetence as well to some extent. It is a matter of profoundly not grasping why this is important. Profoundly. I look at the political leaders that are now negotiating our future, and I'm wondering, how can these people represent us? You have the Turkish Cypriot political leader against whom you have thousands of Turkish Cypriots in the streets protesting. You have the Greek Cypriot political leader who is at an all-time low when it comes to his acceptance from the public, and this is shown poll after poll. His credibility is so low. We are talking about incompetence in understanding how the people on the ground feel. And Argyro had an earlier point that I saw before, saying that indeed, as I said, it was a mistake by why the United Nations Secretary General convened the meeting, because every failure gives fuel to partitionists, and it is us in the civil society that then have to pick up the pieces and bring ourselves together again in order to proceed and keep alive the feeling of and the vision of a united island. And honestly, I do not understand how the United Nations put so much effort and time in processes that are doomed to fail because they cannot in any way produce sustainable results. How can any solution that comes out of this process, as we have described it, be sustainable? It is not only a matter of, getting them together and agreeing or something. It is a matter of the people knowing what this is about and endorsing it, of the people being consciously aligned with it, consciously in favor of this, sharing the vision. Where are all these things today? Are we mocking ourselves? Or are we just, engaged in political games that at the end of the day only give fuel to partitionists and to people who want to say, look, what the other side says, they don't want you.
Yeah. We have another question from Yula Giriaku. Our government and our politicians in general feel and behave as though they are untouchable. How can we make them feel the need to change their behavior? I mean, I suppose the obvious answer is not to re-elect them, but what have you anything other than that? Layuk, would you like to?
Well, I couldn't catch the question, you see.
The question was that the politicians consider themselves untouchable. How can we make them feel the need to change their behavior?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. The politicians are those who are elected, and then who elects them? We, the people, elect them. For what? Because it's not convenient to rule a country with the crowds. So we elect someone to represent us and do the job in our name. And once we just mandate them with certain roles, then once we elect them with a kind of mandate, then we start to approach them as if they're someone who is not reachable, someone at a higher position. But they have to learn, and we have to learn as those who are electing them, that they're for elected servants. They're there to serve the country, they serve the people, and they're the servants of the people. It doesn't matter whether they are appointed or elected one. They're there for serving us. And if we just make that understood and to have close link with people, because once they become elected, they lost the connection, because they think they're at the superior level and the people are at the top, at the bottom. And then they expect respect because people have elected them, and they're so, how do you say, privileged people to serve the country. But this is not the case. We are the people. We are electing them to serve the country and to the people. And they have to continue respecting the people. We have to change this understanding. Not only the change, we don't only need the change in understanding of the politicians, but we people should also change our understanding. And with lot of police, lot of fancy cars, and a lot of unreachable places they work and unreachable places they live, it creates a barrier. And once there is a barrier between people and their representatives, then we have hierarchy, and this hierarchy is not good. When you look to some pictures from Germany or from other country, seeing a prime minister just biking, and seeing a prime minister just lining in a queue for shopping and buying something in the market, I really feel very envy. I wish our politicians should have like that, instead of sitting in Mercedeses with some protocol and some how do you say, the police that's just protecting them. Why don't they behave very ordinary people? Do they afraid of their own people who elected them? I think this is the
Thank you. Yes. Andromache, do you have anything to add about they
No,
should
it's
just
just
be
that
humble?
I just think that that is the million-dollar question when it comes to representative democracy. I think this is something that we see all across the world. It is a problem of the representative democracy. It is becoming an inherent problem of our democratic systems, and I believe that we should. This is the greatest concern of for tomorrow, and I think that this is what we need to ponder on collectively.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question, which I just saw, which was about, it was for Layik. I think it was, can you put it up again, please, Nicola? It was basically about the Crans-Montana. Is it true that Turkey was willing to pull out of being a guarantor in Crans-Montana?
Yes, it is true. It was something challenging, as far as I know, because I wasn't in the core group. I was in the technical group, but of course we were aware of many things. And what I know was the Turkey just convey their message to the Secretary General, saying that the Turkey is ready to just revisit the how the system was designed. I mean, the security system. And then there were two things were discussed. One, to just the unilateral intervention and the amount of soldiers be launched in Cyprus. And in principle, they were ready and were saying that they need to see a time. Time was negotiated, whether to see 2 terms of rotational presidency and to see the Turkish president, the presidency time, and see if the federation is functioning. And then what they were saying that the prime minister should also join the negotiation in Crans-Montana to just reach the final decision. But we learned that although the Turkish prime minister and even the Greek prime minister and the prime minister of the UK, that was at the time, it was Tsipras in Greece and the Mrs. May in UK. We were expecting them to come, but at the Last Supper night, we learned that somehow something went on, and then the prime ministers weren't allowed to come the Crans-Montana. The last thing that was said by Mr. Anastasiadis, saying that he regrets that he is really in the position of giving a lot of privileges to the minority group. And then once he said this, we heard that Mr. Guterres has said that there is no common ground to take these negotiations further. So you see, at this age, just considering talking about minority, majority, and power sharing, it's so sad.
And here we are today. Andromache, can I give you the final word before we...
Yeah, my final point is that I know that we are all in despair, and I know that we don't have hope, but I think that we should look down to the people, because we should remember that the people are not represented in this process. And we saw a magnificent march on both sides of the divide on Saturday, and I think this is where we should be investing our hopes for the future. This is where our eyes should be, and I believe that this is where I honestly believe that it is time that the Cypriots spoke and presented the leaders with their own desire for the future of this island. And I think that this is what is at stake today. The Cypriots understanding that their future lies in unity and seeking and demanding it.
Thank you. Well, I hope they show at least in the next parliamentary elections, at least to show some displeasure, if anything, if nothing else.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You've been wonderful guests. Thank you. And I've got a big thank you down here. Thank you from Mariana Benedou Goster. And hope is what we need right now. Yes. And Layik, you were especially appreciated. Women, we are ready to make the difference. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.